Just before Grandstand here on BBC One, time to find out what the weather holds in store with Peter Cockcroft. Your weekend fix of sport now on BBC One in Grandstand with Steve Ryder and Sue Barker.
It's all action at Holby General in 20 minutes. First on BBC One, may the voice be with you. Patching up the casualties of love and war now on BBC One to Holby A&E.
Now on BBC One, time to open up this week's Country File with John Craven. You're watching BBC One on the record. Now on BBC One, a chance to catch up with the week's events in Albert Square.
A fantasy love story for Christopher Reeve and Jane Seymour now on BBC One, sweeping away their 60-year separation to meet somewhere in time. Sunday's South East News now on BBC One with Gargi Patel. Well-mature comedy, Last of the Summer Wine in 25 minutes on BBC One. After Harvest Songs of Praise with Pam Rhodes.
Can Compo believe his ears? Has Nora got the hots for him at last now on BBC One?
BBC One, a new series, Carol Vorderman investigates the unexplained.
First on BBC One, the animal hospital tackles the problems that come with a large litter. Constructing a plan for revenge now on BBC One, The Locksmith.
For the weekend on BBC One, village life is shattered, rebellious behaviour and a vicious killing in Bright Hair.
Attempting to save her daughter from a life of sleaze in a seedy underworld, Lindsay Wagner stars in tonight's film drama now on BBC One, based on a true story.
The Close Show is in 50 minutes. First on BBC One, let's hit the road to London. Here on BBC One, it's Ooh La La.
What to look out for if you want to avoid the brush-off now on BBC One with Juliette Morris. Here and now. One before that, poor old Bianca's feeling a bit down, but she can always rely on Ricky.
Before that on BBC One, a new series of Face Value with Alice Beer. Pop group China Black joined Carol Smiley for the midweek lottery draw in half an hour on BBC One, and that's after Crime Beat with Martin Lewis. To cry on. First on BBC One, Here and Now with Juliette Morris. Here on BBC One now, Dell paints himself into a corner.
A caring doctor played by Nigel Havers now on BBC One and causing problems for Dangerfield.
That matter, here and now.
Into the fire for Dangerfield.
Nice having icicles in your crevices, especially when you're laid up in bed. Time to warm the proverbials now on BBC One in Get Well Soon.
A summary of the news now on BBC One with Jill Dando.
A European first for Children's Hospital, a groundbreaking transplant operation in half an hour, here on BBC One.
Forbidden love becomes even more entangled, a dangerous police operation in Undercover Heart, 9:30, here on BBC One.
An assassin's loose in the hospital, Quincy take cover on BBC One in 25 minutes, after Neighbour.
Arnold Schwarzenegger's facing the unlikely prospect of giving birth, with Danny DeVito and Emma Thompson standing by to help him push. Comedy now on BBC One, Junior.
This is BBC One. Grandstand is coming up in 5 minutes after a news summary from Moira Stewart.
Now on BBC One, the news with Moira Stewart. So now on BBC One, before the Generation Game, we're talking French, or something like it.
Trouble in and outside the wards now on BBC One as a Green protest goes wrong and Eve and Charlie clash in Casualty.
At 2:25 this afternoon, Hayley Mills stars in the film classic Pollyanna. Before that, BBC One's off to Walford to catch up on the week's events in Albert Square.
Cartoon fun now on BBC One on the Isle of Pingo Pongo.
How did she cope with it all? Memories of Safi at 9:30 as the Ab Fab collection continues here on BBC One.
At the new regular time of 8 o'clock, Let Yourself Go with Jill Dando. Inside the Strange and Unexplained now on BBC One, Carol Vorderman returns for a new series of mysteries. Now on BBC One, QED looks at the science of a beautiful but very dangerous sport.
Fancy winning $1 million now on BBC One? You'll be lucky.
Here on BBC One, in half an hour, zookeeper Ginty has a chance to become more closely acquainted with the gorillas. First, it's Animal Hospital.
Teaching a priest to be a bingo caller turns out to be quite difficult in Ballykissangel in half an hour. First on BBC One, the real story of one of Britain's most elusive creatures. When the army think they've found an unexploded bomb, the four-legged evacuees are sent to the animal hospital. That's in half an hour here on BBC One.
First on BBC One, Match of the Day with Ray Stubbs. Daryl's finding life behind bars pretty tough. Hopefully the birds of a feather will cheer him up in half an hour. First on BBC One, there's someone else who could do with a lift.
Now on BBC One, if your summer holiday involves the trip to Cornwall, Carol Smiley has some tips.
As yet unseen, Auntie airs her smashing new bloomers at 7 here on BBC One after Jim Davidson's New Year Generation game.
Real life medicine now as BBC One goes live to City Hospital.
This is BBC One and Lance's lucky streak just keeps on coming.
Now on BBC One, Weekend Watchdog with Anne Robinson in widescreen.
To Ramsey Street now on BBC One, and how's Anne going to take it?
Historic events now as BBC Two looks back at the celebrations marking 50 years of Pakistan's independence. The latest releases first on BBC Two in Film 97. First on BBC Two, a wronged war veteran tries to prove his innocence. The Saturday matinee begins with I Am a Fugitive.
A Bollywood villain and some new Brits now on BBC Two, talking to Network East.
Before that, we're sifting through the papers on BBC Two. Stepping onto the front line, decisive moments now on BBC Two follows the camera at war. A battle for a place in the second round now on BBC Two in University Challenge.
Now on BBC Two, discover Shakespeare's Macbeth in an English File special.
Mixing old and new, this is BBC Two.
This is BBC Two. Powerful performances now on BBC Two from Steve McQueen and Dustin Hoffman. Condemned to a living hell within a brutal prison regime, one man holds onto his dream of a flight of freedom.
Feel the rhythm first on BBC Two with a new series of sound stories. First on BBC Two, Whet Your Appetite.
In 15 minutes here on BBC Two, the Simpsons are in the grip of gambling fever. First, upfront music news in the Ozone.
Earth Story first on BBC Two, and dunes are busting out all over. This is BBC Two, now Monday's News Night with Kirsty Walk. This is BBC Two in the land of the Pharaohs. First on BBC Two, if you've never owned a piece of vinyl, then you're too young to be watching this.
Here on BBC Two, we stayed to the end of that session of the UK snooker final, so we're running a little bit later than scheduled. Now Howard Stableford is feeling the heat as we head into the animal zone.
Introducing a night from the natural world now on BBC Two, David Attenborough.
Now on BBC Two in widescreen, if the music doesn't get you, Frank Skinner's jokes will.
Another tale from the storyteller in 45 minutes on BBC Two after Robot Wars.
Are you ready for a ballet classic as you've never seen it now on BBC Two? A daring new adaptation of The Sleeping Beauty in widescreen, introduced by Deborah Buell.
A schedule change now on BBC Two as we go live to the Houses of Parliament for a special service, introduced by Edward Sturton.
Scary stuff now on BBC Two. Are Buffy's worst nightmares coming true?
A new series now on BBC Two widescreen reveals Churchill's Phantom Army, who with stealth and cunning were the inspiration for James Bond. Betrayal, torture and death just a breath away for a British secret agent.
The tensions are rising in the big trial in EastEnders at 10 tonight on BBC Choice, but the tensions are pretty darn high now as righty referees some friends like these. Macy Gray and Melanie Blatt feature on Radio 1 TV tonight at 11 on BBC Choice. But Pricey's not jealous. He's got his own guests on Liquid News. In 20 minutes on BBC Choice, Alistair McGowan has a Posh and Beck special compilation. But now it's a Liquid News special. Oh, everything's just so special tonight. Up next on BBC Choice, it's Liquid News. More comedy next on BBC Choice with Gimme Gimme Gimme.
Jam-packed and foil-wrapped for freshness, this is BBC Knowledge. Welcome to today, Thursday the 24th of June, 1999.
Now on BBC Knowledge, from small acorns, the odd remarkable tree. You're watching Science on BBC Knowledge with Moments of Genius.
This is BBC Knowledge, Seeing Salvation.
You're watching BBC Knowledge.
What is billionaire Sheldon Adelson's extraordinary quest? Find out in the mission after Tools of the Trade. Andy follows his passion and Vanessa continues her campaign. Live stuff in 50 minutes after one man tries to make his dream come true on BBC Knowledge.
BBC Knowledge continuing a special week featuring some of the world's great detectives and their creators.